Tonight, a trust fund drained one quiet withdrawal at a time for 26 years. A flight where a new employee spent 3 hours venting about her job to the one person she should not have told. Two estranged sisters who have been sharing a locker at the same food bank for 3 years on different shifts. A landlord who hired someone to fix a wall and found the wrong thing inside it. And a widower's first Reddit post asking whether 68 is too late to learn to cook. 5 stories. A trust and a stepmother. A flight and a CEO. A food bank and a locker. A wall and what was behind it. And a man with a soup recipe and nowhere to start. Our first story comes from r/JUSTNOFAMILY. Our narrator is a 34-year-old woman. She posted this in February, 3 months after her father's funeral. She had never asked about the trust. Not because she was incurious, but because asking had never felt safe. Her father was not a man who invited financial conversations. When she was old enough to understand, he had told her simply, "Your mother passed when you were 3. There was a small policy. It was placed in a trust. It will be there if you need it." That was the full accounting. She had accepted it the way children accept explanations from adults, not fully understanding, but trusting the shape of them. Her father remarried when she was 8. She will not say much about her stepmother in the post except this. The woman ran the household with complete efficiency, and our narrator always had the feeling, the kind of feeling you cannot name as a child and only understand in retrospect, that she was a guest in the house rather than a resident. Nothing was ever said. Nothing was ever done. It was simply the temperature of the room. She moved out at 19. She saw her father on holidays and a few Sundays each year. She did not see her stepmother more than necessary. This arrangement lasted 15 years without incident. When her father died in November, there was no drama over the estate. There was not much to dispute. The house, some savings, the contents of 2 storage units he had rented for as long as anyone could remember. Our narrator drove out to the storage units the week after the funeral. She went alone. She told herself she was ready for the task. She was not ready for what she found in the second unit, behind a broken lamp, in a cardboard box with her name written in her father's handwriting on the lid. Inside, a manila folder. She sat on the cold concrete floor of the storage unit and opened it. The first document was the trust itself, dated 1993. Our narrator was 3 years old in 1993. The trust had been established in her name with $61,000, the full payout from her mother's life insurance policy. The name trustee was her father. The secondary trustee, designated to assume full management in the event of her father's death or incapacitation, was listed by name. It was her stepmother's name. She had not known this. She had not known any of it. Beneath the trust documents was a statement history she had also never seen. It began in 1993 and ran to the present. For the first 3 years after the trust was opened, the statements showed no withdrawals. The balance grew with interest. Then, in October of 1996, a withdrawal appeared. $840. The notation next to it read, "Beneficiary expenses." The following October, $910. Same notation. The October after that, $1,020. Our narrator sat on the floor of the storage unit and turned pages for a long time. 26 pages. 26 Octobers. Always in October. Always between $800 and $1,200. Always the same 2-word notation. Always the same account initiating the transfer. The total withdrawn over 26 years, $22,460. She had never received a single cent of it. Not for school. Not for her first apartment. Not for the medical bill she had put on a credit card 24, because she could not afford the out-of-pocket. Not for anything. She had, in fact, spent years assuming the trust was either too small to matter or had lapsed entirely. She had never asked because she had been told, in ways that were never direct, that the subject was handled. She called the trust administrator from the parking lot of the storage facility, still in her car, hands not quite steady. She asked why she had never received statements. The administrator pulled the account. He said the annual statements had been sent to the address on file. He read the address back to her. It was her stepmother's address. She found a probate attorney 2 days later. The attorney listened carefully, read the documents, and said there were two separate questions: whether the withdrawals were legally authorized and whether they were used appropriately. On the first question, yes, technically, the stepmother had proper trustee authority. On the second question, the trust terms required all distributions to be used for the beneficiary's welfare. Our narrator had received no benefit she could identify that, the attorney said, was worth examining. The investigation, as of the date of posting, is ongoing. Her attorney has formally requested 12 years of financial records from the stepmother, documentation of how each withdrawal was spent, and any correspondence between the stepmother and the trust administrator regarding the change of address for statements. The stepmother, through her own attorney, has stated that the withdrawals were for educational and developmental expenses on behalf of our narrator. Our narrator graduated high school in 2008. The trust's current balance is $41,300, original principal plus accumulated interest, minus $22,000 withdrawn across 26 years in amounts just small enough to go unremarked. Her last line, $41,000, is still there. I'm not angry about the money. I'm trying to understand what 26 Octobers looked like from her side of the room. Transition_question_1. 26 years. One withdrawal a year. Just small enough not to draw attention. What would you have done the moment you found that folder? Leave your answer in the comments below. Our next story comes from our /antiwork. Our narrator is a corporate training specialist who had been at her company for 11 days when this happened. She posted it the same evening from a hotel room, still not entirely sure what had just occurred. She had taken the job after a long stretch at a company she describes as professionally fine and personally deadening. The new role had seemed like exactly the right change. Better title, better travel budget, a chance to build something rather than maintain something. She had given notice, done everything correctly, and started on a Monday 3 weeks later. By day 11, she was already keeping a mental list. The onboarding had been chaotic. Her equipment had taken 4 days to arrive, her access credentials had been wrong, and the person who was supposed to walk her through the internal systems had been unreachable for the first week. Her direct manager was pleasant in meetings and notably unavailable outside them. In a department planning session, the VP of operations had made a comment about another team that she found both professionally inappropriate and the kind of thing that usually means a lawsuit within 18 months. She had not said this out loud. She had written it in the small notebook she keeps for exactly this kind of observation. She was upgraded to first class on the flight home from her second site visit. The upgrade had come through unexpectedly, and she settled into the window seat with her notebook and a genuine sense of relief. The man next to her was already seated when she arrived, 60s, buttoned down, no tie, no laptop out, just a glass of water and a book he was not quite reading. They began talking the way you do on long flights when neither person is trying to work. He asked what she did. She said corporate training. He asked how the new role was going, and then she told him. She told him about the equipment delay and the missing credentials. She told him about the manager who disappeared between meetings. She told him, in moderate detail, about the VP's comment in the planning session, including the approximate wording and the way no one in the room had reacted. She and her sister had not spoken in 9 years. She is specific about the cause. Their mother had been diagnosed with early-stage dementia in her late 60s, and the question of how to handle her care had pulled at a thread between them that had been loose for a long time. Our narrator had made a decision about a care facility that her sister disagreed with, loudly, and in a way that expanded the disagreement from the immediate decision into every unresolved tension of the prior 40 years. There was a conversation on a Sunday afternoon in their mother's kitchen that our narrator says she still sometimes replays. At the end of it, her sister left and did not call back. Their mother died 4 years later. They were in the same room at the funeral. They were on opposite sides of it. They did not make eye contact. They did not speak. They left through different doors. Our narrator had gone to therapy for 2 years after that. She had, over time, made a kind of peace with the silence. Not a warm peace, but a functional one. She did not expect reconciliation. She had stopped expecting it sometime around year 6. She had built, she says, a life that did not require her sister in it, and she had mostly stopped being sad about that. She began volunteering at a food bank 3 years ago. She chose it because it was walking distance from her apartment and because she wanted somewhere to go on Tuesday and Thursday evenings that was not the television. She had a routine there. She came in, she hung her coat in locker 14 in the back hallway. She worked for 2 hours, she went home. She knew the other regulars by face and name. She found it, she says, genuinely peaceful. Last Tuesday, she arrived to find locker 14 not completely closed. The door was slightly ajar. She opened it. Her own coat was there on the left hook. On the right hook was a jacket she did not recognize. A dark green parka, slightly worn at the cuffs, with a canvas tote bag hooked over the same hanger. She brought the jacket and bag to the shift coordinator, assuming someone had mistaken the locker. The coordinator looked at the canvas bag and said, "Oh, I think that's Claire's. She's on Mondays and Wednesdays. She must have been running late last week and used the nearest open locker." Our narrator stood completely still for a moment. Then she said, "Claire who?" The coordinator said her sister's last name. She stood in the hallway of the food bank and did the math. Her sister had been volunteering here for just over 3 years. She had been volunteering here for just over 3 years. They had been arriving on alternating days for approximately 36 months, hanging their coats in the same locker, sorting the same produce, pouring coffee for the same regulars. They had never overlapped. They had never been in the same room. She asked the coordinator carefully whether Claire knew she also volunteered here. The coordinator thought about it. She said she didn't believe Claire had ever mentioned it, and she didn't know if she'd put it together. The names on the volunteer list were first names only. Our narrator went back to the locker. She stood in front of it for a while. She took the green parka off the hook. She turned it over in her hands. She thought about 9 years. She thought about the Sunday in their mother's kitchen. She thought about opposite sides of a funeral room. Then she went to the coordinator's desk, tore a piece of paper from a notepad, and wrote 2 sentences. She folded the paper and put it into the inside pocket of the parka, the small zip pocket, the one you check without thinking. She hung the jacket back in the locker. She left the locker door the way she had found it, slightly open. Then she went and sorted produce for 2 hours without telling anyone what had just happened. The note said, "I didn't know you were here either. I come Tuesdays and Thursdays." Her name. 2 days later, a Thursday, she was sorting boxes in the back when her phone buzzed. The number was saved in her phone as her sister's name, unchanged from 9 years ago, one of those contacts you keep without knowing why. The message said, "I found the note. I've been coming here since Mom died. You." She wrote back, same. There was a pause of several hours. Then her sister sent one more message. "Do you want to get coffee sometime? Not to fix anything, just coffee." They have spoken twice since then. The conversations are careful and slow, and she says, nothing like they used to be, which might be exactly the point. They're not repaired. They're not even close. But for the first time in 9 years, they're using each other's first names. Her last line, "We have been one locker apart for 3 years. I keep thinking about what that means. I haven't figured it out yet, but I think I'm supposed to try. Transition_question_3. 9 years of silence. The same locker. Different days. Is there someone in your life you've been that close to without knowing it? Leave in the comments. Our next story comes from our /legaladvice. Our narrator is a landlord and small-time property investor. He posted this while waiting for a continuance to be granted by the court. He has owned the building for 11 years. He bought it as part of a small portfolio, 2 buildings, both older, both needing work, both generating moderate rental income. He was not a negligent landlord, by his own account, and I have no particular reason to doubt this. He fixed what broke. He answered his phone. He renewed leases without drama. The tenant had moved in 4 years before the dispute began. She was a quiet occupant, paid reliably, submitted maintenance requests in writing. In her 3rd year, she began noticing something in the bathroom. A smell she could not identify, a subtle discoloration along the base of the far wall that she initially assumed was water damage from the upstairs unit. She contacted our narrator. He sent someone to look. The inspection found nothing obvious. He filed it as resolved. The smell persisted. The discoloration spread. A year later, she submitted a formal written complaint citing mold and health impacts, attached documentation from her doctor, and requested either remediation or a rent reduction. Our narrator's position was that the cause was her own housekeeping, specifically a collection of plants she kept in the bathroom that he believed were contributing to excess moisture. She disputed this vigorously. The case went to small claims court. 18 months of procedural back and forth followed. Motions, continuances, a failed mediation. The case was finally scheduled for a proper hearing. A court-ordered property inspection was coming. Our narrator, who believed his position was correct and wanted the apartment in presentable condition for the inspector, hired a contractor to open and repair the bathroom wall. The contractor's name is mentioned in the post. Our narrator refers to him simply as a reliable guy I've used before. He is relevant to the story. The contractor opened the wall on a Tuesday morning. Our narrator was not there. He was across town at a different property. He received a phone call at 11:45. The contractor said, "You should come here. I found something." Behind the drywall, behind a layer of original insulation that had never been replaced, was the building's original mechanical chase. The enclosed shaft running vertically through the structure that houses pipes and ventilation ducts. And tucked into the joist cavity at eye level, folded twice and slipped between the beam and the subfloor above, was a sleeve of documents. The contractor had not touched them. He was, our narrator said, the kind of man who understood that finding paperwork inside a wall meant waiting for the owner. Our narrator drove over. The documents were building permits from 1987. The building had been a licensed medical facility, a small diagnostic clinic, by the record, before its conversion to mixed residential use. The conversion permit had been approved and inspected. Almost everything had been signed off, but one line on a 1987 inspection form was not checked. One line read, "Ventilation system replacement, required prior to residential occupancy." And next to it, in the cramped handwriting of a building inspector who had been doing this job since before a narrator was born, "Outstanding at time of filing." There was no subsequent permit in the sleeve, no follow-up inspection record, no documentation that the line had ever been cleared. The contractor looked at our narrator. Our narrator looked at the duct running vertically through the open wall, the original 1987 duct, intact, unreplaced, still pulling air through a building that had been residential for 37 years. The contractor said, "I think that's your mold problem." Our narrator called his attorney from the parking lot. His attorney listened to the description of the documents and said, "Do not touch them. Do not photograph them yet. I need to come see this myself, and then we need to talk about who is actually the defendant in this situation." The attorney arrived the next morning. He reviewed the 1987 permits, had a structural engineer dispatched that afternoon, and received the engineer's preliminary assessment within 48 hours. The original ventilation system was confirmed as non-compliant with residential air handling standards and had never been upgraded. It was, the engineer noted, consistent with the type and pattern of mold growth documented in the tenant's complaint. The building had changed hands 3 times between 1987 and the year a narrator purchased it. Each transaction had included a standard property disclosure. Each disclosure, signed by the seller, had stated, "No known structural defects, no known ventilation issues, no outstanding permits." Our narrator's attorney filed for a continuance on the small claims date. The original case was paused. A new set of legal proceedings, involving the prior owners and the estate of one who had since died, was quietly initiated. Our narrator declined to describe the details. His last line, "I went in to fix a wall. I fixed the wall. Everything else is apparently going to take 2 more years and cost considerably more than fixing the wall. But I know I am no longer the one who did something wrong. And in this particular situation, that distinction is worth something to me." Transition_question_4. He opened a wall to fix one problem and found an entirely different one that had been hiding there since 1987. Has something you try to fix ever turned into something much bigger? Tell us in the comments. Our final story tonight comes from r/AskReddit. The post was made by a user who identified himself only as a 68-year-old man. The title was, "Is it too late to learn to cook?" The body of the post was 2 sentences. His wife had passed away 3 weeks earlier, after a brief illness. They had been married for 41 years. She had always cooked. He did not know how. He was asking the internet. The post received over 3,000 comments in 48 hours. The top voted comment, which accumulated 4,000 upvotes, said simply, "No. Start with toast. It is impossible to fail at toast. Report back." He replied, "I will try the toast." He posted an update 4 days later. He had made the toast. It had been, he reported, successful. He had eaten it with butter, and then, because he found a jar of marmalade in the back of the refrigerator that had been there for some time, with marmalade. He noted that he had not eaten toast with marmalade in 41 years, because his wife had not liked marmalade. He had always quietly preferred it, but had stopped buying it. He said eating it alone at the kitchen table felt strange. He said it tasted like something new. He said he did not know yet if new was good. He received over 800 replies to that update. Over the following 6 months, he posted 7 more updates. They became, for a significant portion of the thread's followers, something they check the way you check on someone. In the second update, he learned to scramble eggs. He burned them the first time and reported this matter-of-factly. The third update noted that he had attempted soup, a chicken soup from a recipe provided by a commenter, and burned it twice. He described the second burning with a dry precision that earned him 200 upvotes on its own. The fourth update announced that the soup had not burned. He had eaten 2 bowls. In the fifth update, something shifted. He described searching for the recipe his wife used to make for winter, a specific dish from her home region, something with stuffed peppers and a tomato base that he had eaten hundreds of times without ever thinking to ask how she made it. He had looked through the kitchen and found no recipe card. He had not expected to feel as strongly about this as he did. Within 12 hours, a commenter posted that they had grown up in the same region, recognized the dish from his description, and had tracked down a version of it from an elderly neighbor who still made it the old way. They typed the full recipe into the thread. Every step, every proportion, every note about what to watch for and what will go wrong if you rush it. He made the dish on the first anniversary of his wife's passing. He made enough for 2 portions. He brought the second container across the street to his neighbor, a retired woman who had been unwell and had not been cooking for herself. Her name, he mentioned, was Margaret. Margaret turned out to be a retired cooking instructor. She had taught for 22 years. She invited him to her kitchen the following Saturday, then the Saturday after that. Over the next 3 months, she taught him 4 more dishes, all from his wife's region, all things she had made during their marriage that he had eaten without ever thinking to ask about. He described the process of learning them as more difficult than I expected and more important than I can explain. He posted his final update 7 months after the original. The title was The Peppers. He had made the stuffed peppers. It had taken 2 attempts. The first attempt, he reported, had the right flavor but fell apart during plating. The second held together. He sat at the kitchen table, the same chair, and ate them slowly, alone, in a quiet house. His last line in the final update, "They were not as good as hers. I do not think they ever will be. But I made them. I sat at the table where she used to sit across from me. And for a little while, the kitchen felt like it used to feel. I did not know that was possible. I am glad I asked." The post has been saved by over 40,000 users. The original comment, "Start with toast," has been quoted in 47 subsequent Reddit threads about grief and starting over. Our narrator, who is not the man himself, but a commenter who had followed the thread since the beginning, writes, "I came for the recipe thread and stayed for him. I don't think he knows how many of us were sitting with him at that table every time he posted. I hope he does now." 5 stories. A folder in a storage unit, 26 years in the making. 3 hours of honesty at the wrong altitude. A note folded into a jacket pocket in locker 14 after 9 years of silence. A wall that hid the answer to a question nobody had thought to ask. And a man who learned to make toast, then scrambled eggs, then soup, then stuffed peppers, at a table where someone used to sit across from him. New stories every Tuesday and Friday. Subscribe if you'd like to be here for the next ones. Thanks for listening. Chapters. JSON. Chapters. Title. 26 Octobers. Starters for word. 180 subreddit. JUSTNOFAMILY. Permalink. slash r slash JUSTNOFAMILY slash comments slash pilot 7story1 slash sentiment tense length underscore class long title C2A start underscore word 1130 subreddit antiwork permalink slash r slash antiwork slash comments slash pilot 7story2 slash sentiment funny length underscore class long title locker 14 start underscore word 2140 subreddit TrueOffMyChest permalink slash r slash TrueOffMyChest slash comment slash pilot 7story3 slash sentiment tense length underscore class long title what was behind the wall start underscore word 3130 subreddit legal advice permalink slash r slash legal advice slash comments slash pilot 7story4 slash sentiment twist length underscore class long title is it too late start underscore word 4180 subreddit AskReddit permalink slash r slash AskReddit slash comments slash pilot 7story5 slash sentiment uplifting length underscore class long